Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, Dustin Fox, Jason Lloyd, Tyvis Powell, plus, ba-da-da-da-da, you're loving him, Mikey McNuggets. And so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show starts now. Booyah!
Welcome, everybody, to the ultimate Cleveland sports show. And boy, do we got a lot to get to today. I'm Adam the Bull, and the Cleveland Guardians. What if, well, I don't want to tell you exactly what if, but you probably know what I'm getting to. What if something didn't happen? We'll get to it in just a little bit. Jason.
Speaking of what if, I've got one for the Cavs. What if something happened in the 80s if it went the other way? We'll talk about it. G.
And, of course, I'm G. Bush, and they leave me with the Browns and the what if.
There's lots to pick from.
We got a lot to pick for, but I'm going to let you know it's not the fumble or the drive. Stay tuned. McNuggets?
Yeah, we only have 3 topics, so I have nothing to tease. So let's dive right into it, G.
Yeah.
The biggest what if in Cleveland Browns history is?
The biggest what if is if the Cleveland Browns never left. Would they still win the Super Bowl? As you guys know, the Browns end up leaving. They become the Baltimore Ravens. And when they become the Baltimore Ravens, by the year 2000, they become one of the most dominant defenses of all time. You have Jonathan Ogden. You have Ray Lewis on that team. Eventually, you get sack master Terrell Suggs, Ed Reed. They win a Super Bowl, and they've been dominant ever since. If the Cleveland Browns never left, would they still have that trajectory? I know they won't have the second first-round pick because they got a pick from being an expansion team. Mm-hmm. But they take Jonathan Ogden. You still have Ozzie Newsome right here in house to make the picks.
Yeah.
You have Bill Belichick in the roles, and you have a lot of guys like Nick Saban on that team. Do you think they get it done?
That's the first part of it. Is obviously they hired a good coach, but would Bill Belichick? People like to say. People out of Cleveland like to say the Browns fired him. The Browns did not fire him. The Ravens fired him.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Same organization.
Yeah.
But
that's the what if.
The current Browns have enough.
They have enough issues.
Yeah, they don't need to be tagged with that. Would he not have been fired if they had not moved? Would that have happened either way?
The whole season unraveled once the move was announced.
That's right.
So that season probably goes.
Would have been a totally different season. They probably would have been better that year.
Right. I mean, the biggest part of the what if is Art would have had to sell. Art Modell would have had to sell the team. And, I mean, he could have sold it to his buddy Al Lerner.
Right.
And Zach and I wrote a whole story on that about how Al Lerner was really the figure behind the move to Baltimore. He was behind all of it. But had Art sold the team, I believe a lot of the same things that happened in Baltimore would have happened here. Ozzie probably still takes over. They take the same players, and it's a much, much different outcome.
I mean, you look at that coaching staff. They had Kurt Ferentz on that squad. Look at all of the coaches, Saban and some of the other. They had
Jim Schwartz on there.
Jim Schwartz, I think, was on that roster. There's a lot of college coaches, big time coaches. And my thing is that I've always felt bad because Ozzie. I mean, the way he picks these players. I mean, even on the way out, he gets Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Like, he just always is restocking. And then they put the Ravens in the Browns division. That's even crazier.
Yeah.
So now it's a thing where, and I know, we had the fumble and the drive, but I think when I look back at it, obviously if they've did it like that, what if they have moved on from Bernie Kosar? Would Bernie still be who was the quarterback at that point in time if they would have stayed?
And what would the Ravens have been? Because they still would have probably had an expansion team in Baltimore.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the NFL, it's a long story.
Yeah, I guess we don't know what they would have done.
It's a long story of how Cleveland was able to secure an expansion team. A promise. They dropped a lawsuit because the NFL promised to be back by 99. They would have had no reason to make that promise to Baltimore.
Yeah.
So who knows?
So the division would have been made up differently.
You got a great point about they put Baltimore in the division. They stole your wife, then invited you to the wedding and made you come on the honeymoon.
Yeah.
And then it was crazy because the Ravens it just seems like they got great overnight. Like it was like, oh yeah, we're just the best team. The way they did the Giants, I remember watching them play the Giants in that Super Bowl and remember just feeling sick.
Yeah.
How are these guys this good? And that was my team.
But the Browns were a good team.
Yeah.
Those before they did the
Right.
playoffs the year before.
Yeah.
And then when the move was announced, everything unraveled.
Right.
Once that
so
came out.
they would have built.
So they were still building.
They would have been good.
Yes.
That year they were leaving, they would have been probably been good that year because it fell apart because
They started 5-1 or something like
Yeah.
that during
Yeah.
that year, and
Yeah.
then they announced it, and
right,
it just
and
went.
that was the end of it.
I mean, we don't have enough time to get into the whole thing, but the city was trying to find a way to build Art a new stadium. He wanted to stay and renovate where he was. He stood back and didn't block. He didn't oppose Gateway when Progressive Field was built, Jacobs Field at the time. When Gund Arena was built, he didn't block it because he thought the city was going to take care of him next. They didn't. There's plenty of blame to go around and to how it all came about. But had he gotten on board with building a stadium earlier, maybe they could come up with a way to include another stadium into the Gateway project. I don't know. Gateway barely passed the way it was. It was very, very close.
And by the way, again, I obviously wasn't around at that time, but I was told that they kind of rushed this stadium.
Oh, for sure.
And so had that not happened, had he stayed, had they built a new stadium, it might have been, they still probably be looking for a stadium now, but it might have been nicer, and it might have, who knows?
Yeah, I don't think they'd
the
be
whole
looking for a
stadium
stadium
now.
now.
Yeah,
I think
they might just still be in
I
Cleveland.
mean, it wouldn't be at that current site though, because they wouldn't have had enough time to knock it down and build. They'd have to pick a new site.
Yeah.
I think we gloss over this sometimes. It's so hard to get over. Like people say, just get over it. No, it's almost like things that happen in history. It's hard for you to just get over that because you got to think about where it puts you. You completely started over. You started over with nothing. Not a coach, not a general, nothing to hang your hat on.
The league definitely rushed it. They were trying to get a team back here. The Browns were set up to fail, but I can't use that as an excuse 25 years later.
No
why
way.
they still can't get.
It was an
shoes on
excuse
the
the
right
first
feet.
bunch of years,
Yeah,
but not now.
Not now.
If I always think if Modell never moved the team, would you say he was a better owner than the Haslems?
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. Every fan would have.
He was a horrible businessman.
Yeah.
He's the only NFL owner that lost money. Like he had to take out a loan to pay Andre Rison's contract.
Yeah,
He had to get a loan from the bank.
And he fired Paul Brown. That was pretty stupid.
Yeah,
That was kinda
wasn't-
crazy.
not
And
great.
by the way, had he not fired Paul Brown,
That's another what if.
I would have been a Browns fan my whole life.
Some would argue the Browns might be a different organization because they would have kept winning.
Probably. Yeah.
Wow. See, the Browns
That was a good one.
It was a good one. I'm waiting to hear what you guys got to say about the Guardians and the Cavs, though.
All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, G just referenced it. What if? Oh God, this one has to do with the weather. I think you know where we're going with this. What if you hadn't had the rain delay in Game 7 of the 2016 World Series? That's coming up next on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Welcome back to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. And guys, here on WKYC, guys, we just did, if you missed it, we just did a segment on what if with the Browns. And G. Bush said, what if the Browns hadn't been stolen from Cleveland? Well, now it's time for the Guardians/Indians. And, this one's a pretty obvious one. Even though you don't know for sure what would have happened, what if there had not been the rain delay in Game 7 of the World Series? And I know most fans feel the Indians would have won the game. Obviously, we'll never know. It was a short rain delay. Was it 30 minutes? 20, I can't even remember exactly how long it was. I'm sure there's some people that remember it to the minute.
Yeah, it seemed like forever.
But, famously, and part of the Indians obviously had the momentum coming back. Rajai Davis's home run off Aroldis Chapman. But also, famously, when the rain delay happened, the Cubs went back to the clubhouse and they were despondent. And Jason Hayward kind of rallied the troops at that point. So, again, do we know for sure that the Indians would have won the game? How could we possibly know that? But if it hadn't been for the rain delay, I know at the time I thought the Indians were going to win.
I thought it was over.
And had they won, it would have changed everything.
Yeah.
It would have changed everything. First of all, Cleveland would have had back-to-back championships in, July, August, 4 months. 4 months. After no championships, you would have had two in 4 months.
In the most exciting fashion ever.
2 Game 7s.
Two Game
2 Game 7s. against, in one case, an iconic team in Golden State, and in one case, an iconic franchise against the Cubs. And it would have, for the Dolan family, changed their reputation forever.
Absolutely.
And it was
They would have been hands down, when we had these polls, who's the best ownership in town? They would win easily every time had they won that championship.
They had young players. They had, and at the time they were relatively young. You look at it. The problem I had wasn't it a reverse of what the Cavs did? The Cavs were down 3-1.
Yeah.
Right. They blew a 3-1 lead.
And you couldn't have told me when the Indians went up 3-1. I knew it was. I was like, it's over. They got. And boy, them was the 3 of the longest games. And then it's all flipped on his head when we hit the home run. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we got these dudes right now. And then all of a sudden, it rains. And, it was...
The flip side to
Still
the
hurts.
Cubs story about how they called everyone in and rallied the troops
Yeah.
and they settled everyone down. It was like a perfect timeout at the perfect time.
Right.
The Indians at the time went back to their
They were
clubhouse.
champagne. They were prepared for the champagne.
And they were prepared for the champagne. They had World Series champs banners hanging all
not
over
good.
the locker.
Yeah, right.
And the players were like,
yeah.
just like everything sinking into the moment because you had to prepare.
Right. And baseball players are superstitious.
Yeah.
And you see that, there's guys like, oh, that's bad luck.
Yeah.
Or that's a jinx or
they
whatever.
had all of the lockers covered
Yeah.
with the wrap because you have to in baseball the game can end like that with
Yeah.
the home team winning and you
Right.
don't have time. They want to go in there and celebrate.
Man.
So they had the whole thing covered. And then the one other thing that I thought was interesting when you talk about the rain delay, it didn't rain. It never really rained.
Did it?
No.
I thought it rained for like a few minutes.
It was not enough to call the game.
Yeah.
So I went back and found the quote because we actually wrote about this at The Athletic during the pandemic. We had
Yeah.
nothing to write about.
Yeah.
We did a story on what if it didn't rain. We found this quote. Zach Meisel and I found this quote. John Hirschbeck talked to our Ken Rosenthal during the broadcast.
Yeah.
He said, we've been talking for the last couple of innings. This storm, we thought it might miss us, but at the last second when the inning was getting ready to start, he said it's going to hit us. And in this situation, we don't want to take any chances. We don't want to have them play now in the 7th game of the World Series in extra innings. The score and the conditions aren't right. So just to keep the field perfect, we'll cover it and wait this out. It never really rained that hard. They easily could have played through.
Right, yeah.
And why is it the
Not to cut you off, I've heard stories of Indians players walking up and down the dugout going, "Where's the rain? Where's the rain?" Like it was.
So they were kind of stressed by it. Where for the Cubs, it was a break.
I don't know if they were stressed by it. I think they were
Yeah.
stressed by seeing the wrap in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
I think they were angry.
Right. There was so there was a frustration
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
So that, and I was going to just ask,
Yeah.
why is it the thought process that it was a foregone conclusion that the Indians was going to win that game? Was it just the momentum
It was the
factor?
momentum.
It's like we just had that home run. There's no way they are done mentally. We're about to win this game.
I think it's the momentum. It's the momentum of the Cubs being the Cubs, and here we go again. We're going to lose this in the most dramatic
That's what I
fashion
thought
possible
at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, because Chapman was throwing 1,000 miles an hour when he.
Yeah, but he was tired. He was gassed.
Oh God, they so overused him.
I mean, it was one of the most improbable home runs, and I think again, I'm not gonna say the Guardians never really recovered from that, but I thought they had a better team the next year.
They did.
17, they doubled down, they spent more money, and I thought that team was better than the 16.
Yeah.
It was.
and it didn't.
They've mostly disappointed in the playoffs since then. That team had no business getting to the World
At
Series.
all.
They had 2 pitchers.
Three.
Three.
Cody Allen.
Cody Allen,
Kluber, and Andrew Miller.
And Andrew Miller.
That was it.
And they wasted his lifetime. Like Andrew Miller, after he played for
He was
for
done
the
after
Indians,
that.
he was finished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just walked off into the sunset like a
basically.
Jedi mind trick.
Well, we talked on the YouTube show about LeBron bringing in the player empowerment era.
Yeah.
Terry Francona revamped the use of bullpens. Like he's the reason that
That
you see
World
what you
Series,
see
well,
now.
both of them, both Madden and Francona, that series went crazy with bringing in the bullpen early.
But I mean, Tito did it the entire playoffs because he had Ryan Merritt starting against
Right.
Toronto.
I hated pulling Kyle Hendricks when they did for the Cubs in Game 7. He was fun. He was just dominating.
Yeah.
And but also just you think about the way the fans are so frustrated by the Guardians' lack of spending, which I'm with them.
Yeah.
But if you'd won so many of the narratives about the Indians/Guardians go away if you win that World Series.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Absolutely.
It goes away.
And that's the thing. The Dolans wouldn't have done anything differently.
No. No.
But yet they'd be viewed so
Yeah,
dramatically
100%.
differently.
Because you got that championship.
Yeah.
Because then you say, because people are like, yeah, they went to 3 World Series, but they didn't win. But then it's, they went to 3 World Series and they won one.
Well,
it's totally different.
Well, they would have been vindicated.
Not that the Dolans were there for the first.
They would have been vindicated by the thought process that in baseball, you can get lucky a little bit. So just if you don't got the money, you don't got the funds, you can run into a hot team at the right time and you can win a couple championships. I still don't know how the Giants was winning. Giants won some championships. I was just like, I don't know who was on their team at all.
They won 3 in 5 years.
That's crazy.
And they had a higher payroll than but the Indians at the time, their payroll wasn't that low. They were closer to middle of the pack then than they are now.
I mean, yes, fair.
They were probably like 20th in payroll instead of 28th or whatever they are now.
They brought in Bourne and Swisher a couple years before that. Encarnacion,
Encarnacion was after.
But at least there were some names you could say, oh, they was doing this. There were some names there. Now,
yeah, and imagine like they had won the World Series. Like we were excited when they signed Encarnacion, but imagine that had been coming off a World Series, and you're like, look at them. Now they're spending money. They won the World Series. It would have been, such a totally different thought. I think you're right. Ultimately, they wouldn't have done anything differently. Obviously COVID affected them somewhat. Some of that's been used as an excuse.
Yeah.
And some of it's legit. But, yeah. All right. Well, we did a what if for the Guardians. We did a what if for the Browns. What if for the Cavs? That's coming up next on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Welcome back to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show here on WKYC. G. Bush let us off with a what if for the Browns. I did it for what if for the Indians/Guardians. And Jason, you're up with a what if for the Cavs.
What if Michael missed? What if
shot?
Michael Jordan misses the shot in 1989? It's not that unusual. He missed over 14,000 shots in his career, so it's not that uncommon.
Here it is.
He missed the winner at the end of Game 1 of the 91 finals. He missed at the buzzer of Game 2 during the 92 finals.
Yeah.
Missed a three-pointer in Game 5 in 1998, so it's not like the guy's never missed a critical shot before. What if he missed that one? And really it goes back to, what if
Brett Sellers?
What if Rick Mahorn didn't elbow Mark Price in the head in February during that 88-89 season? The Cavs, nobody talks about this. The Cavs during that season were on a pace. They had a winning percentage over 70%. They were on pace to win over 60 games.
Right.
They were the top seed in the East, and they were rolling, and they go to Detroit, and Rick Mahorn crushes Mark Price in the back of the head, kind of wrecking Mark's incredible season. Wayne Embry storms the court, is trying to fight Rick Mahorn and Bill Laimbeer, sticking up for his guys, and the Cavs were a 500 team the rest of the way. So they were trending toward a championship-type team. Right. And then Craig Elo gets hurt, obviously, and then Craig is still guarding Michael on the big shot. I talked to Craig Elo a couple years ago for a story on this exact topic. What if Michael missed? And Craig said, I absolutely think we would have won a championship. If not that year, at some point, we would have won a championship with that team because Ron Harper got traded a couple months later. So does Ron Harper still get traded if Michael misses that shot? If the Cavs go on, maybe they win the championship that year. If they don't, if they make a deeper run, who knows? But instead, they're knocked out in the first round by a 6-seeded Chicago team. And that was before Michael had really established himself. That was when his trajectory really started to take off, was after that shot.
And Ron Harper talks about that. He said he was supposed to guard Michael Jordan. He went to Lenny and said, hey, I want to guard him. They put Craig on him. And all due respect, I mean, you look at the shot from the wide angle. I mean, he got the shot hand there. I mean, he had the double pump, fade, and hang in the air for 10, 15 minutes. It's solid defense. If you look at that. I mean, come on, man.
He gave a good effort.
But the thing is, this is right. They caught Michael right when this is right before the ascension.
Yep.
And you look up those first 6 years, Michael Jordan was putting up crazy amounts of points, but he couldn't beat. Isaiah Thomas talks about it. Didn't beat the Celtics in the 80s. Did not beat the Lakers in the 80s. You take a look at could not beat the Pistons in the 80s. And then you look at it, the Cavs kind of treaded water. They get to 88, 89, 90, 91. Now it looks like the Cavs could be in contention a little bit with the Knicks, and that was their little window to get it. And Mike hit that shot, and then by 90, 91, it was a problem for everybody.
Yep, you're right. That was their window coming off the Pistons and Celtics dominance, the Lakers dominance of the 80s.
Right.
There was a small opening there before Michael took off to where they could have made their mark.
And the Celtics were an 8 seed that year.
Yeah.
They lost to the Pistons in the first round. Do you believe they would have won a championship that year?
Yes.
You think so?
Well, it's hard to say.
So they would have played the Knicks in the next round.
Yeah. I think they could have played for a championship. I think they were the best team in the East. And I honestly had forgotten about the elbow that Mark Price took from Mahorn.
Yeah.
I spoke to Wayne Embry when I was writing the story, this what if Michael Miss story, and Wayne's the one who reminded me of it, that it changed their whole season. Like Mark was having a terrific year, and it just disrupted everything. They were a 500 team after that. So if that play doesn't happen, I think Mark missed time after that. If that play doesn't happen, do we even get to the shot?
And then we talk about Ron Harper gets traded. Brad Daugherty has back problems.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
That was it. You had they had it. I mean, you talk about Nance, Elo, Hot Rod, Daugherty. They still had Mike Sanders, Steve Kerr. They had everything you wanted. They had shot making, they had size, they had length, but Brad's bad back caught up with him. They lost their top scorer, one of the most athletic scorer they had in Ron Harper, and then Mark Price kind of just after a little bit of time he just faded. Like Mark kind of just disappeared after that.
He had knee problems.
Yeah.
He tore his ACL back when that was a very dramatic injury.
All of a sudden, Brad started becoming obsessed with NASCAR.
That's what he's a Carolina boy through and through.
I didn't realize Brad Sellers, friend of the show, was on that Chicago team.
Yeah.
How did you not know that?
He talked about it.
I know. Just the years in my head didn't line up.
Where you been?
Well, I knew he played with Michael. I just didn't realize on that particular play he was on the court.
Yeah.
Michael
hugging
Jordan.
him
on his hometown floor.
He was rubbing that other grown man's waist like this. Look at this.
Yeah.
Look, Brad comes to the ball like we're not passing it to you. Give it to Mike. Look, boom. He stopped you full. Hey, come here. Let me show you some.
I don't know that Brad's gained any weight since then. I'm not sure.
Look, he looking up like, I don't even got to jump. Yep. If Brad would have came 2 seconds later, he got knocked out by that punch. Jordan was. Who's the dude that got knocked out with the White Sox?
Tim Anderson.
He got that Tim Anderson. He walked into one.
We got about 2 minutes left.
There's a lot of what ifs in Cleveland history.
What are some other ones? We don't have to go through and dissect them.
Obviously, the other two World Series. There's plenty of what if moments in those.
Jose Mesa in '97.
What if the strike wouldn't have hit when 94?
Yeah.
They was tied with the White Sox.
Yeah. What if the Browns would have drafted Lamar Jackson instead of Baker?
Josh Allen.
Or Josh Allen.
That's crazy.
What if the Browns had drafted Patrick Mahomes instead of Myles Garrett?
Yeah. What if Tim Couch never got hurt?
Yeah, or had actually decent players around them.
Yeah, that's crazy too.
We did it during the YouTube show. We did the what if the Cavs had lost the draft lottery in 2003.
That was a good one.
LeBron would have started his career in Memphis.
Yeah.
And Carmelo Anthony would have started his career in Cleveland.
What if the Cavs had not traded Kyrie Irving when they did?
Yeah.
I think they would have won a second championship.
What if the Cavs took Giannis with the first pick instead of Anthony Bennett?
Or what if the Cavs wouldn't have screwed up the Carlos Boozer move?
Yeah.
I felt like they was on to something. I thought they was going to get to the finals way quicker.
What if they pulled off the trade to get Klay Thompson? Because they were trying to get Klay Thompson here. They would have paired Kyrie with Klay Thompson and Tristan Thompson all in that one draft. They were trying to get all three of them.
What if Nick Chubb had not gotten injured against the Steelers?
Yeah. Don Rodgers. What if Don Rodgers didn't die? That was a big piece. That was a huge piece to what they were trying to do.
What if Dustin Fox had gone to Penn State instead of Ohio State?
That's a good one.
I had a whole list of these. I don't remember where I put it now.
These is good.
What if they had started the ultimate show in Dallas instead of Cleveland?
Very real possibility.
Mikey
would never have known Mikey McNuggets. He would never be Mikey McNuggets.
I'd be Mikey McBarbecue.
He'd be Mikey McHillbilly.
The smartest thing you ever did. Do it in Cleveland.
What if the Indians had traded
for Pedro Martinez?
Oh my
gosh.
Yep.
Can you imagine Pedro with that lineup?
Yep, they didn't want to trade Jarrett Wright.
By the way, I believe the 95 Indians, most walk-off home runs in the history of baseball.
What if we had more time? Well, we get
We
into
don't.
that later.
Thank you for
See you
joining
on
us on the
Monday.
Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Have a nice weekend.
Peace.